Hi everyone, my name is Paula Dunn and welcome to the Limited Edition Leadership Show. I am a teenage leadership expert and cognitive scientist, and today I have with me Victoria Jacono-Gilmovich. She is the director of the Inner West Institute of Music, and she has been teaching and playing music for over 24 years. Welcome, Victoria.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure. So, Victoria, I'd love to talk to you about what got you into music when you were younger.
So I was born into a family where my mum is a piano teacher. She's still a piano teacher. And up until I was 5, the only kids I ever saw coming in and out of my house were her music students. So I had this perception that every child in the planet learns piano. And then I got a sort of a weird shock when I went to school and I was the only kid in my class that could play an instrument. But yeah, I guess already by the time I hit kindergarten and felt like I was more, felt sort of more unique, I stuck with it because I felt that that was my thing. That was what I was surrounded with outside of school, but flourishing in at school. So I just ran with it, I guess.
Mm-hmm. That's great. That's great. And so what was it like when you moved into high school then? So as you developed and grew, you know,
yeah,
teenage years are quite challenging times where we're all wanting to fit in and belong. So what happened for you?
I guess so through primary school I worked really hard, and in year 6 I applied for some music scholarships in various private schools, and luckily, by the time I hit year 6, just sort of before you transition into high school, I had several scholarships on the plate, and decision sort of was made of which school would be the best. And I went to a really nice private school in Sydney and was on a full music scholarship. And back in those days, it was made fairly obvious that you were on a music scholarship. So I think these days actually it's not only confidential, but I think parents aren't even, they sign that students, they can't even tell their own kids that they are on scholarship. So now if you are on a music scholarship, for example, and you're a parent that has been given a letter saying that your child is a music scholarship, some schools don't even let the kids know themselves, so they think that they're regular students. And I think that's an example of what did happen in the past to music scholarship kids. They were kind of sort of put in the front, and I would say that one of the things was, you know, there was this big thing of getting value for money. So the music scholarship kid would be sent to, you know, some past student's funeral out of, you know, to play at a funeral, or was sent to play at this function. And there's this constant sort of throwing around of whoever, you know, might be talented so that they could, you know, get value, more bang for their buck in terms of, you know, you're not paying fees, so we'll use you for background music or, you know, fancying up events. But I guess at school, I also, again, it wasn't so common to learn and do, 100 activities like kids these days. So I still feel like I was one of a very small pool of people that did music, and then it was an even tinier pool of people that were on scholarship. And I certainly had my fair share of students coming up to me and saying, oh, well, our fees just got increased this year thanks to needing to supplement people like you, or, you know, things like that.
Wow.
And I guess also, you know, because I practiced so much and trained, I didn't attend a lot of the functions that, you know, like the parties and the camps, you know, there was always something on, and I wasn't able to attend a lot of sort of the things that normal kids would go to. Mm-hmm. Not that I wasn't allowed to, I just didn't have time to. Mm-hmm. And it made me feel probably even more isolated. I didn't feel like I could relate to my peers because I wasn't hanging out with them. I didn't feel that a lot of them necessarily wanted to hang out with me either. I had a very small handful of friends. And I guess as high school went on, I removed myself even more from my peers. I started going to music camps and musical activities outside of school, and I always feel like you make friends so much easier and quicker through music. And I thought that it would be more, well, I felt more comfortable with my musical friends.
Yes.
So I started hanging around them a lot more, which led me to jigging school a lot. So I started sort of slipping through the cracks and saying that I was going off to music rehearsals just to avoid hanging out with my peers and, you know, going and meeting up with other kids that I'd made friends with in music camps like that. So I started truanting a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So and it became obvious after a while. So yeah, that kind of my schooling started to decline, and my attitude and my performance at school started to really decline, and my relationship with my peers and my teachers really declined as a result of that, because I felt this need to escape because I felt so different.
Yes.
And it was too easy to, you know, and I just did.
And how long did you do that for before it was discovered that you were truanting?
I guess I started sort of wagging school in little bits and pieces from year 9, and I kept doing it up more and more until the first person to catch me, of course, was my mother. And my mother, being a musician, actually, she kind of got it, and she said, look, as long as you're safe, I don't mind, and as long as I know where you are, I don't mind. So she started almost not encouraging it, but I guess for her it was a way of saying, look, I want you to be at school, I want you to enjoy school, but I don't want you to suffer, so I'll let you have a little bit of whatever you're doing just so you can satisfy that urge. Because I think she believed that if she said a blanket no, then I would do it even more, which is probably true. Maybe because she was similar. So I guess when I got to year 12, it got to the point where I was offered to go to university without even finishing year 12. I'd already had placement. I got told I didn't need to do year 12, and I sort of was determined not to finish school. I decided that what's the point? What's the point to hang out with people I don't really get along with? I'm just going to become a musician anyway, so what's the point? And I struck a deal with my mum. My mum really wanted me to finish the HSC. I'm a child of 2 immigrants that, you know, literally were only in the country for a year or 2 before they had me. My dad never finished school. My mum finished school, but, you know, everything was a struggle. You know, it was so hard that all they wanted was for their, you know, child to finish the HSC. That was what they'd worked for all their life. So I struck a deal with my mum that I would finish all of year 12 and complete the HSC on the condition that if I wanted out of school, she would back me up. So she would say, oh, Victoria has a rehearsal, or Victoria's not feeling well, and she'd sign everything to authorise me to get out. But it got to the end of term 1, and I'd had so many sort of sick days that I was told that if I had one more day off, I'd have to repeat year 12. So you can imagine how many days I took off.
Wow.
And sometimes it was as simple as ringing my mum, and I would say, Mum, I've had enough. She'd pick me up, we'd go to the movies. So my mum's take on it was, so long as you're happy and you stay in school, I'll back you up. My dad didn't even know. I think he was horrified when he found out. But eventually, look, my mum negotiated with the school, probably considered dirty right now, but she basically said, well, I'm happy for my child to leave, but you might have a top of the state in music in your year. And back then, you know, it was every school was fighting for, you know, first in music, second in music. You know, the rankings was a big deal.
Of course, yeah.
And she basically blackmailed them and said, well, if I can guarantee you that my child will be in the top band for music, you're going to lose that status. So we're happy to walk, or you can keep that. And they let me stay. Again, not great tactics, which probably wouldn't work in this day and age, but it did in the late 80s, early 90s.
Yeah, well, that's the challenge, because in those days, like even for myself, because, you know, we're around a similar age, and, you know, they didn't have those conversations where a parent could go and talk to the principal and say, look, my child's being bullied or not fitting in or something's going on. Because what I found also was that they blame the child instead. It's not the school, it's not the institution, it's the child. There's something wrong with the child has behaviour issues or a mental illness or a learning disability or something wrong with them. So we all grow up feeling like we're flawed and we've got, you know, we need to be fixed.
Yeah.
So the fact that your mum was quite, I guess, innovative and creative to be able to do that, and I think, you know, from a mental health perspective, she was a really good psychologist for you in terms of you know, surviving high school to get to where you are today, you know, which is a successful musicianist and well-respected, you know, person in your own right.
I think she saw that if she didn't run with me, she'd lose me.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big issue. And, you know, I feel very strongly about students doing well at school and trying their best and being committed, but I also feel very strongly about them feeling a sense of safety, if not at school and if not with their peers, but with their parents. Yeah. So I feel very strongly about that. And I try and parent in the same way. I mean, if my daughter just feels slightly run down, mind you, she's 7, but she works very hard. She does a lot of things. But if I feel like she just needs a day off, she doesn't need to be sick, I'll just take her for a day off.
Yeah.
And I think that in the long run is an investment in our relationship and in our bond. And it's also an investment in her sense of feeling safe at home, that she has somewhere to remove herself to and feel safe.
Yeah, I think that's really wise parenting, because again, like from our time, it was unheard of to have so many extracurricular activities. I, like yourself, the only extracurricular activity I had was piano lessons, and that was something I really enjoyed doing. However, these days, you know, the kids are running around every day doing something, you know, so there's no release and there's no outlet. And a lot of the teens that I work with are going through this, you know, even the social anxiety that you have. You know, a lot of educators, you know, pastoral care that I've spoken with believe that those that are highly gifted or high achievers at school are okay, they'll be fine, and they kind of dismiss them, saying, well, you know, they're getting the grades, they're performing, they're always on the mark, but they don't understand that what's going on underneath, you know, it's a, you know, there's a foundation that's ready to crumble. And we take those behaviors into adulthood. I mean, for myself, especially for teens, when you're at that age and you're still trying to understand your emotions and your thoughts and all of these things culminating inside you, you start having this this black and white thinking, this all or nothing, you know, if I don't do this, then I'm going to be like this, you know, and it becomes this, you know, and I think adults a lot of the time try and superimpose their rational thought and thinking onto the younger generation, saying, well, it's okay, it's not the be all and end all and you'll be fine. But I remember when I had career advisors saying to me, you know, oh, well, if you don't go to uni, you can go to TAFE instead. For me, that was like the end of the world. They didn't get to my thinking level to say, well, you're telling me something that I don't want to hear. So you have to take me on a journey. You have to take me, you know, get on the bus with me on the same bus stop and take me for a ride and explain to me, rather than saying, well, it's okay, don't worry about it, you'll be fine, you just do this instead. And it's like, well, it's just, it doesn't work that way. So so tell me, Victoria, what are you doing now? So now that you managed to survive the HSC and you went off, so what are you doing now in your life?
Okay. So I left school and I went to uni, and had in my mind that I would be performing and playing for the bulk of my career. I had this perception that I wouldn't do any teaching. I was doing some teaching on the side already, but I had this perception that I would be this performer. And I guess I've had this kind of, as you have one child, you think, oh, I want to be home more. You leave them with your parents or your husband or your babysitter, and it's just not the same. You want to be at home. And I guess I started saying no to gigs more and more, and then teaching more and more to stay home. And then by the time I had my second child, then I thought, no, I just don't want to do this anymore. So I sort of flipped my career and started teaching nonstop. And I started off teaching sort of in schools during the day and at home. And I just had this kind of waiting list that kept growing. And I also had this feeling that a lot of the students that were coming, a lot of my students wouldn't come to me to start music from scratch. So I had this feeling that a lot of students that had come to me were increasingly frustrated with the way they were being taught, and they were looking for something different.
Yes.
Yes. And, there's lots of different ways to teach. And I always say to everyone, to parents, to teachers, there's no perfect student, there's no perfect teacher. There's a great relationship, and that is perfect. And sometimes it's just not the right relationship. And I found that the relationships were not always ideal. And I started having this really sort of long line of students sort of waiting. And I had this people-pleasing thing. I didn't want to turn anyone down. It's just this, I don't have time for you, and I feel so guilty that I can't teach you. And it just bugged me for a long time. So it was actually, my husband said, look, you just got to expand. And I said, well, I can't multiply myself. And he said, well, multiply yourself. And I went, geez, great one. But I started finding like-minded friends and colleagues that maybe didn't have as much work, and started sort of talking to see if they taught in a similar way. Mind you, no one teaches in an identical way, but I started finding people that I felt resonated with my style of teaching, and started off with one teacher in my house, and then had 2 sets of lessons going on, so I was able to get that waiting list to start with that second teacher, and then started having another teacher in my house, and until I sort of felt like my house became like Central Station, and there'd be like 3 teachers going at once and 2 toddlers running around. And I thought, now's the time to move to a commercial sort of premises. So I opened one spot, and within 1 year that filled out. So ended up getting another spot. So now I have 22 teachers working for me. And they're a combination of working at one of the studios or the other studios, and they have several rooms each, or doing home visits for some students. And for me, I put the focus on looking after the teachers more than the students, because I feel like if the teachers are in line and happy and sort of, then that will just automatically go on to the students.
Correct.
So I feel more comfortable and more useful supporting the teachers, who some of them are a similar age to me, some are a little bit younger, some have just started uni or mid-uni, so they're in their more of a sort of mid-20s, and they're finding their feet as adults, having just left high school. And that's now my business, that's where it's at. I sort of help the teachers sort of grow their rosters as much as they want. Some want to work a lot more than others. Some just, are really busy. And I still teach myself. And that's the business.
That's great. Wow. It's it sounds very successful. And aren't you also an examiner as well? Yeah,
I do a lot of other things. So I examine, and there's like an Australian String Teachers Association, so I'm the New South Wales president, and that also gives support to music teachers. So again, I feel really that it's really important to support the teachers, so that the teachers can support the students, rather than putting all the pressure on the students or all the pressure on the parents. So I do a lot of different things. I perform in an orchestra, the Metropolitan Orchestra. And actually, I know I'm going to backtrack a little bit, but I said that I left performing to teach more because that suited my family life. But I guess, you know, your core never really goes away. And after 3 or 4 years of not performing much, I started getting very desperate and almost depressed that I wasn't doing what I was kind of meant to do. I don't even know what I'm meant to do. I'm not sure if I'm meant to be a teacher or a performer, but I started getting a real sort of craving for getting back in a room with other musicians. So I started performing again. And luckily enough, I mean, I found this beautiful orchestra that is not a full-time orchestra. And so I feel like the musicians really, really want to be there. A lot of them are music teachers by day or by night. And they come together to play because that's not their full-time thing. And we get to tour and do some really cool gigs. So I'm lucky that I can step away from my business when I need to or when I want to. And then I also can just do that if you know, right now with the what do I say, the situation of 2020, it's you know, there is no performing, there are no concerts. So I'm lucky that I can focus on my business. But you know, the minute the performances come back, I'll probably be one of the first people to jump out there and grab an opportunity to perform.
Yeah, no, wonderful. And how has the coronavirus impacted your teaching per se, or have you been able to pivot?
We definitely pivoted. So I knew at the beginning of the year that things were going to change, but I guess I was keeping my finger on the pulse but didn't do anything. I was just sitting there being worried. And then I literally watched, I can't remember what date it was, I think it was, you know, beginning of March, 60 Minutes on Sunday night, and literally got off the couch, emailed my teachers and said, right, from tomorrow morning we're all online. We're not going into the studios. It was an overnight decision. I think I spent about 3 days pulling all-nighters, just emailing and watching webinars and sort of seeing what I could do. And we all conducted our lessons on Zoom or Google Meet. But then we started getting clients from interstate. So the students that you would never dream of having, I would never imagine teaching kids from Melbourne or Canberra or anything like that, suddenly became a possibility. And these people are enrolling within the West Institute of Music for online lessons exclusively. They know that they are just going to stay with online lessons. So it's kind of opened like a new menu of possibilities.
Now that sounds really exciting. And how are the students coping in terms of their confidence levels when you're teaching them, or when you and your staff are teaching them music? Because obviously you went through a lot of you know, challenges growing up, being uniquely different by being gifted and talented. How are these students coping with the pressures of, you know, of their talents?
I would say that there's a mix. I can't say that all the talented students are completely comfortable with themselves. I can't say that the not so talented kids aren't comfortable with themselves. I mean, every child is different, and every parent is different, and every teacher is different. And I always describe it as, you know, those PowerPoints that have the, you know, the 3 prongs, whatever. It takes like a teacher and a student and a parent to get the electricity. And if one thing is out of whack or one thing doesn't quite agree with the others, it's just such a fine balance. So I've got some really sort of gifted students, and they do really well and they're very confident, and some gifted students are always second guessing themselves.
Yes.
But sometimes I think that it's because they second guess themselves that they work harder and therefore appear to be talented. So I think there's this grey area between talented and hardworking. And sometimes someone may appear talented, like naturally or whatever, but they're just a hard worker, and it's because they are insecure with themselves, unfortunately, that drives them. And then you've got some kids that are, you know, they happily soar away at their violins, and they are, you know, they're working really hard, but, you know, they know that they're not going to be violinists and they know they're not, practicing, but they just enjoy it. So hats off to those kids too, and their parents are happy with them just enjoying that skill,
Yeah, I think there's a fine line. Like, I remember when I was learning to play piano, it was something I really enjoyed, and then eventually it started becoming a chore because I was very, I guess I put a lot of pressure on myself because I was probably a lot of that hardworking and second guessing myself, especially when I would play in a Sedfords and my hands would be shaking, my heart would be racing, sweaty palms, and even though I practiced and practiced and practiced. So I think it's a sense of, there is a sense of you can be confident but have low self-esteem on the inside, so you can project out going, yes, I'm doing what I need to do, but on the inside I'm fragile and I'm not surviving, and I'm overly criticizing myself, especially being, when you're being judged for your performance. It's not based on who you are, but it's based on your performance. And a lot of us who wrap our identities around certain things, whether we're really great at our instrument or great at sport or great at, science or maths, it's like wrapping our identity of who we are. And as women and girls in particular, we internalize that. So if we fail or do something wrong, we internalize it saying we're bad people, we've done something wrong, so it's something wrong with us. Whereas for boys or for men, they externalize it. So they're more like, well, if they make a mistake or something or they fail, it's like, well, it's an external thing, something's happened outside of them, so they can, work differently. And it's interesting how our brains play in different ways of doing things. So so it's very interesting to see the paradox and the challenges that, as well as what you're seeing in your students. And I think from the experiences that you've gone through growing up yourself, I can see why students prefer to work with you, and your team, because of the culture that you bring into your organisation, making sure that the teachers are okay. And that's something that I do as well. It's like, it's no point helping teens create confidence to conquer life when the leadership team is all over the place and no one's on board and no one's mentally sound and doing happy. So it does make a difference. Yeah. So look, thank you so much. If people want to find out more about you, Victoria, and your business and what you do, where can they find you?
Well, I've got a website for my business. It's innerwestinstituteofmusic.com, and we also have the same name, I guess, on Facebook, Inner West Institute of Music. I'm based in Sydney, but technology. I wouldn't have said that 6 months ago. It's incredible. It's mind-boggling. I probably wouldn't have even said that 3 months ago.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Look, sometimes, things work out well. I'm the same. I've gone online as well. So it's great. It's expanding nationally, and potentially internationally. So we'll watch this space. So look, I really appreciate the time you've taken today to talk about your personal journey and the challenges you went through growing up, especially being gifted. I work with a lot of students that are gifted and talented, and the pressures they put on themselves and wanting to fit in and belong, but at the same time, wanting to enjoy their talents as well and not feel like being judged and ostracized as a result of it. I mean, it's just not right. So, so I really love, thank you so much. You're a great person. You're a great role model for our future generation. So thank you. Thank you,
Paula.
That's welcome. And look, if you all enjoyed today's show, please make sure you share it, like and share, and don't forget to subscribe.